Nicola, hi there, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's get straight into things. Can you tell us a little bit about the issue of gender imbalance in ELT?
Well, I particularly looked at it in terms of conferences. So, because I mean, that's a very big question. And you might say that a profession that's, I don't know, at least 60% women and probably higher doesn't have any gender imbalance, because when you start asking questions like, where are the women in ELT, which was the title of a conference talk that I did at IATF a couple of years ago with Russ Main, the answer is like they're everywhere. And they are, but they're not in certain positions. Like conference plenaries are still at least 55% male, and some conferences are still 100% male lineups for their plenaries. So, and I think that when people start talking about like who are the experts, who are the authorities, who are the gurus, that the list is always male majority in people's minds. So that's the kind of imbalance that I'm talking about.
What kind of ways could this imbalance be addressed?
Well, for the conference thing, which is probably the most obvious component of it, then I think you can say that women should put themselves forward, but that means applying to give talks at conferences, which women do, but they can't make themselves be invited to give a plenary, because that's either that they are sent by their publisher or the conference invites them. And so I think the only way that one's going to change is if, I don't know, all the usual faces said no for a year, and then those spots would have to go to women.
Yeah. Do you actually know of anyone who's done this? Anyone who's turned down a plenary spot?
I know two people that have raised it. So one of them, I won't say their names in case they don't want that to be said, but one of them was asked to do a UK conference, and he said, well, is there going to be a woman as well? And they said, we've only got the budget for one speaker. So that put him in a bit of a difficult spot, but he did do it. And then the next year they had two speakers, one male and one female. So I think that was probably connected to the question that he'd asked. And then I know somebody else that was supposed to be in a forum, which means at IATF, which means that there are 4 talks, all are related to the same topic. They're short talks and they're kind of grouped together. He turned it down because he didn't really feel comfortable with it. And in the end, the conference organisers came back and said, look, on balance, everything is equal, but just not this particular event. And they were choosing from talks that had been proposed, and they didn't have any more women, and the field was tech. So the question there is like, why are there not so many women in the tech field of ELT? And so I think he has then going to do it, but he needs to be very publicly, I think, saying, look, I'm doing this, and I want to raise awareness of the fact that, there should be more women up here, and what can we do to make sure that there are. The rest of them, I don't think they do turn it down, though. I think they say, oh, I need to pay my mortgage, I can't turn down work, as if women don't have the same situation. And then they say, but I do support the Fair List. And I think they think that's enough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you wrote an article for One Stop English, and this pertains to this gender imbalance as well. But in the article, you stated that when 500 people were surveyed and asked to think of big names within ELT, and 9 of the top 10 names turned out to be men. In fact, 17 of the top 20.
Yeah.
So why is this, and what else can be done about it outside of conferences as well?
I think historically, a lot of those big names were established quite a long time ago when things were not as balanced. And so, they deserve to be where they are, but things haven't changed enough that other people have been able to come up behind them. But the other thing, I think, the reason that we automatically, all of us, men and women, think of our authority figures as male, it's because it's been bred into us culturally. And until we start admitting that, we're not going to be able to realise that we have this automatic bias. Because if you look around at cartoon characters, superheroes, even cereal mascots, breakfast cereal mascots, chefs, it's all men. And so we're growing up at the currency that, isn't it, in the UK we've got one of our notes got a woman on it or something like that. It's everywhere we look. Children's stories full of male characters. even the animals are usually male. It's absolutely unbelievable. So we're being just indoctrinated all the time to think of men first when we want an authority for something. I think that's why.
Absolutely. And in ELT, as you said, there are, in the classroom at least, there are, it's a 50-50 split really of men and women. So it would be good to be an industry that leads a change where more women are given an opportunity to speak at conferences.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do have that opportunity, but I think it's that they might not necessarily be as keen to take it up because they don't think that they're qualified or able to do it, whereas men are more likely to be not thinking about whether they can do it and just thinking about whether they want to. And, you know, there are things for which you are invited, and those invitations are not necessarily going to women as much as they're going to men.
Mm-hmm. Now, back in 2013, you wrote a blog post titled "The Cult of Celebrity in ELT," which we touched upon before, and you described having a manuscript proposal passed over in favour of a big-name author, without mentioning any names. Can you tell us a little bit about this issue and what you'd like to see change in the future?
Well, 3 years is actually quite a long time, so my thoughts about that have changed quite a lot. The idea that like the big names are taking all the work, I think, is changing because a lot of the publishers are using author teams now. So no one is writing a whole course book in the way that they can really make that impression on it. And I've stopped when I've been asked for proposals. I don't do those anymore because I used to think that publishers were interested in new ideas, and now I realise that actually they've just got a lot of people carrying out sort of increasingly vague instructions, trying to deliver something that no one really knows if the students want that or not. And I think, you know, I've got my own ideas about syllabus and speaking tasks, and I think that the way for me to get those written is to self-publish, which is kind of what I've been doing. But, you know, that said, I have written a book for Collins where a lot of my ideas kind of made it in, and they weren't bothered about like how big the name of it was. But that's not a course book. But I'm not sure that the industry works like that anymore with course books. And I've had some other kind of insights into how that whole thing works, is that I think sometimes the name you see on the front of the book isn't the person that wrote it.
Okay.
I was approached by a big name, a man, once, to co-write a book with him. And he said, you know, he had all these ideas and he would look up his notes and he would send me the thing. And what he sent me was a 1-page Word document. It was a list of chapter titles with words like history, family. And I thought, oh, okay, I see who's going to do the writing in this co-writing task. So I wonder how much more of that goes on.
Right, okay. Well, speaking of books, one book you've written is about speaking classes, in fact. And this is obviously a very popular area of English. Can you tell us 3 things that you would recommend a new teacher do when prepping for a conversation class?
Yeah, well, the first thing is you can make it really easy for yourself by not having to do that much preparation. And that's kind of method that I outline, where you have your text, your reading text, as an inspiration, but you don't start with the students reading the text. That's the key thing, because that speaking lesson then becomes a reading lesson, and then they start asking about the vocabulary. You've wasted half an hour, nobody's spoken. So that's the thing. You do the speaking first about the topics raised in the text, and then maybe they read it later. And I also think people have, especially newer teachers, maybe they kind of want to jazz things up by having a taboo topic in class, and I don't think that's necessary, because most people will not publicly go against whatever the prescribed view is in their culture, and more innocuous topics probably cause more actual debate. My most controversial class ever was talking about, it was a throwaway comment by somebody about the fact that their dog was a member of their family. They considered it to be, and, you know, that generated an hour of debate.
Yeah, I think when it comes to dogs and cats, people do have quite strong opinions, don't they?
Yeah. Food is another one. Relationships is another one. You know, you don't need to go very far, I don't think, and talk about human rights and things like that, which everybody will say the same thing on anyway.
Yeah, so everyone has an opinion on a more generic topic, pretty much. Okay.
Definitely.
And for the coming year, coming back to the conferences, do you have any plans for speaking at conferences in 2017?
Big plans, actually. It's not been officially announced yet, but it probably will have been by the time you actually run this podcast. So I'm going to be running a pre-conference event alongside another woman.
Brilliant.
And it's about like issues relating to women in ELT. So I will be running a session, I think, but I'll be coordinating like other sessions. So this is a really big way of testing out whether or not there's a kind of wider conference in this.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that I've been doing alongside that is set up a big Women in ELT Facebook group, which I sort of see as a massive networking thing for women in ELT, and that's got 250 members at the moment. It's growing really quickly.
Okay, so what's that called and where can you find it?
So the Facebook group is just called Women in ELT, so you can probably find it through searching Facebook, but you could also look for my blog, which if you Google Simple English Nicola Prentis, there's a post in that blog that will lead you to the website, to the Facebook group.
So Simple English Nicola Prentis.
Yeah.
Wow, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much again for taking the time to talk to us.
No problem, thank you.
And best of luck for 2017.
Thanks.